Hi, my name is Sion. I'm an artist and a writer based in Perth. I work mainly in video, photography and performance, and also I do lots of writing, mainly poetry. I've been exploring how I can use my own body and how I can use nakedness in my photography and my video work as a way to talk about things like gender and masculinity, sexuality, but also ideas of carnality and also profound spirituality. The reason I've chosen to work mainly in video and photography is it's a safe space to explore the ideas I'm looking into, especially when I first started using my naked body to talk about sexuality. I hadn't come out to my parents as bisexual, so in that way it was a secret safe space for me to explore myself and the ideas I was looking at. And it would also give some distance between me and the audience, especially when you're making yourself so vulnerable by completely exposing yourself. If you have the ability to control what angle they're looking at you, what kind of lighting, and how long they get to look at you, and that makes you feel a bit more confident, a bit more powerful. A few years ago, my practices in poetry and art were very distinct and very different, and then they very quickly started to sort of merge, particularly in my understanding of metaphor and the power of simple metaphors that exist both in my visual art and in my poetry. Really simple symbols that people can grab onto, and it's not too complicated, kind of quite accessible. And also the same subject matter I explore in both. Sometimes if an idea is too grand or like a logistical nightmare to make into a video work, I'll just write a poem about it. And sometimes I'll be writing a poem and realize that it would be much more powerful if people could just see it for themselves, so I'll make it into a video work or a photograph. I've been exploring in my work for the last few years two polar ideas of the body and sexuality, and then the kind of opposite extreme of this kind of spirituality, religion, and sort of mixing those two worlds that for so long in my own life were completely separate, fusing them together in weird and striking ways. I like to explore ideas of gender and masculinity and kind of sometimes, I think, make fun of masculinity, but also provide an alternative definition of masculinity, my own definition of masculinity, that can apply to me as a male instead of the one that was forced upon me growing up. For me, art is a way to take something like pain or frustration and turn it into humor and joy and beauty. And art is a way to take selfishness and turn it into generosity. So that's why I'm drawn to art and writing. It's a way for me to deal with a personal problem in a way that doesn't feel so self-centered. I turn it outward and I try and make it something that's productive and useful in my life. I think in a way I've always been an artist. I've always, as far as I can remember, drawn and collaged and done creative things. I grew up in a very devout, evangelical, Pentecostal Christian upbringing. Despite that, my parents still gave us a lot of freedom, but we did grow up in a culture, this kind of mentality where there was lots of rules and there's lots of expectations on you in terms of being a good person and being a good Christian particularly. Especially moving into my teenage years, it was very radical in terms of shaking and laughing hysterically and speaking in tongues, and it made me open to really strange things and not afraid of them. Also growing up, I lived in a home for the mentally ill, which my parents were in charge of running, so I got to see and talk to a lot of mentally ill people. So that also exposed me to a part of society that which we try and ignore, which is kind of marginalised. I also lived in two homes, retirement homes, so I also got to meet another marginalised group, which were elderly people. So it made me think about very heavy, strange, important things like old age and the mind and spirituality. Growing up, I was a very committed Christian. I went to many churches. I was a founding member of a church when I was 18. So I gave Christianity absolutely everything. And then started to question, and art was a way for me to question. Now with my art, my parents haven't seen a lot of my new work. They know I've made it. Initially when I made a lot of my new work, which has been photographed and filmed in my parents' house when I was living with them, I did it in secret, out of necessity partly, because at the time, initially when I made the first round of works, they didn't know about my sexuality. So the secrecy of making the works at night in the house was a really nice metaphor for the kind of secret I had, which I hadn't shared with them. And also it was kind of fun having this secret and my art being this kind of secret, intimate thing, especially because I am interested in intimacy. Now they're aware of the art I've made and they have seen a photo or two. I think what they would find more shocking about the work is not the nakedness, as opposed to some of the work which uses some religious imagery. I think they would find that a little bit more confronting. But all in all, they're very accepting and open to what I've been doing. Now in my art and my writing, religious imagery, particularly a certain kind of lighting, certain colours I'm drawn to. I can see the influence of my Christian upbringing. It still pervades a lot of the way I think and a lot of what I do. And whilst I was at university, I pushed myself to do strange and sometimes frightening things from either me or the viewer. I would coat myself in sugar. I would hide around the campus a lot. I've done lots of things that challenge me and challenge people watching the work. For me, the decision to use my body in a really direct way by exploring nudity, it was a big personal taboo. It was a big sort of phobia of mine to get naked. So that's partly why I decided to do it, was to head on, just confront my fear. So that even if the work was terrible, there was still a positive reason to do it. And hopefully it'd also be good artwork. But either way, I was still getting something from creating the artwork. Using my own body in my work has been quite, I think, liberating. It's made me a lot more comfortable with nakedness. It's also been quite humorous. Some of the situations I've put myself in, I've been laughing, and so in that way it's been quite fun. But definitely the first few times I exhibited the work, I was quite nervous. But it was really important to me to use my body because a lot of the art I see that involves nakedness, the people are very pretty. So I thought it was really important to show people naked who aren't supermodels, who are just normal people. And I think that helps other people doing the work to be more comfortable with their bodies and to just accept themselves as they are. Yeah, I think hopefully when people see me taking that step of being brave and choosing to be comfortable, it can hopefully inspire them to do the same thing if they are uncomfortable like I was. Art has been a part of my psyche and my way of operating my entire life. It's something that I've never not done. I can't imagine not doing. It's kind of like an addiction in that way. It's just a part of how I deal with life and process life, to question the way I think and see the world and turn that question and that act of exploring my own life into something that is not all about me, but other people can take and maybe find interesting or beautiful or funny or useful to them in some way. I find my practice is quite private and internal, and in that way, when I'm making my work, there's not a lot of engagement with other artists and the Perth art world. And so it's this nice moment when I exhibit the work where it's finally sharing this secret thing I've been working at, slowly, finally being able to share it with other people. I love that kind of reveal. So I enjoy that dynamic of these two extremes where it's hidden away and then shared, and then you return to your cave and keep working away at it. My relationship with working in Perth has been this kind of retreating and then re-emerging, retreating and re-emerging. Growing up, my parents moved all the time, so I kind of have a bit of that restless energy. So I see myself in the future traveling a lot, but I do love the atmosphere of Perth. Although it's a city, it doesn't feel too fast-paced for me. Living right in Perth, being able to talk and meet artists and writers and creative people, to meet other people that see things the same way or similar, or understand why you do what you do. I find that really stimulating for my practice. What really keeps me in Perth are those people, being around those people and being stimulated by them. I found this really nice sort of balance right now where I'm living and what I'm doing, which I really want to try and maintain for a while longer before I take some sort of risk and do something new, travel somewhere or do a residency somewhere in the world. For me, the moments where my art feels successful is those moments when I can see it really connects with someone. I've had art where I've made people cry, I've had art where I've made people laugh, I've made people scream, I've made people dance. Those are the kind of responses, not always that extreme, but those are the moments where I feel really happy and really excited about what I'm doing, because that spark you have when what you're making connects to someone, it makes all that time feel worthwhile. That's particularly what I would say I define as success in art and writing.